You can be told the truth and still fail to see reality. Louis XVI received warnings, reports and proposals for reform. The strange part is that information was not the same as understanding. In 1788, Louis XVI sat at the centre of France. Around him stood one of Europe's most elaborate royal courts. Versailles was a residence, government centre and social machine. Information travelled constantly towards the king from across the kingdom. Officials recorded taxation, harvests, disputes and disturbances in the provinces. Couriers carried those reports through roads, gates and royal offices. The monarchy was not operating without information about its country. Louis himself understood that France's finances required serious attention. Reforming ministers had repeatedly tried to change the fiscal system. The difficulty was not simply persuading one king to listen. Around the crown existed layers of privilege, ceremony, and expectation. Access to the monarch was itself organized by social position. That structure shaped which voices stood closest to royal attention. A provincial complaint might begin as something intensely personal. At the next desk, it became an entry in a ledger. At another office, it became a summary for a superior. By Versailles, lived difficulty could look remarkably tidy on paper. Nothing in that process required anyone to deliberately deceive the king. The information could remain accurate while its emotional force disappeared. A crisis experienced through paperwork behaves differently from a crisis lived. That distinction matters. The monarchy did receive warnings, and people inside it did attempt reform. But knowing that something is serious is not the same as living where its consequences are serious. France's financial structure made effective reform politically difficult. Tax exemptions protected interests represented near the political centre. Reforms threatened arrangements that powerful groups considered established rights. The king therefore encountered resistance from inside his own system. Outside Versailles, economic pressure was measured in very different units. For a household, bread was not a line in an account. It was breakfast, supper, and the calculation between them. Poor harvest conditions intensified pressure on grain supplies and prices. A baker experienced scarcity through flour sacks and waiting customers. A minister experienced it through prices, supply reports, and requests. Both could be discussing the same problem with different urgency. This is one of power's quieter effects on perception. The centre often encounters consequences after they have been translated. Hunger became a shortage report before entering a royal meeting. Anger became correspondence before entering the king's daily routine. Urgency became something that could be scheduled, discussed, and postponed. The system was converting experience into administration. By 1789, the monarchy requested grievances from across France. Villages, towns, and estates recorded demands, wishes, and complaints. France was telling the political centre what concerned it. And here's the mechanism. Distance doesn't hide the facts. It changes their weight. What feels unbearable at the edge of the system can look manageable from the centre. The grievances reached Versailles in extraordinary physical quantity. Information about dissatisfaction was therefore hardly absent from government. Yet knowledge of dissatisfaction did not determine how leaders interpreted it. The Estates General opened at Versailles on May 5th, 1789. Around 1,200 deputies arrived from across the kingdom. The three estates entered a room organized around inherited distinction. The third estate deputies wore black beneath a golden royal dais. Even the room expressed the political distance under discussion. Deputies arrived expecting that the gathering might produce significant change. Royal ceremony could not contain the expectations gathered inside Versailles. Political authority increasingly depended upon whether people accepted its judgment. None of this meant that revolution had been inevitable, but the monarchy's interpretive distance had become politically dangerous. Paris continued to experience food pressure as political tension intensified. On the 5th of October, thousands travelled from Paris towards Versailles. Bread and political grievance had travelled directly to the palace gates. The people normally represented by reports were physically outside Versailles. The abstraction had acquired faces, voices, and physical presence. On the 6th of October, the royal family departed Versailles for Paris. The palace remained magnificent, but its distance no longer protected authority.
Louis XVI's problem was not that reality never reached him. It reached him through a position that changed what reality felt like. And that may be the most dangerous distance power creates, not between leaders and facts, but between leaders and consequences.